Hi there, I'm Sian Reeves. Welcome to Who Cares? This is a YouTube channel for you, real people and professionals, to discuss caring, a chance to be listened to and to be heard, to share some small victories, some little wins. 600 people a day are leaving their work to become carers. 1 in 5 of us are doing over 50 hours a week of unpaid care, which equals £184 billion a year, which is a whole other unfunded NHS. Who cares? I do. Today I'm speaking to Marcia from the Midlands. Hello Marcia, how are you?
Hi Sian, I am very well, thank you. And you?
I'm good. Thank you for giving me your time today. As you know, we're talking about caring for loved ones, caring for parents. And I wondered if the thing that is most perplexing, I think, to me, now I've spoken to so many people, is how do we end up in that situation where we gradually realise, oh God, I've actually got to do something more about this? I mean, what was it with your mum? Did she get very poorly?
So my mom was very independent. So she's not someone you would really worry about because she was just so independent. And then one day she called me. She didn't feel very well. My sister says, I don't think mom was very well. I said, you know what, I'm going to call the doctor and I'm going to go over there. I was filming on a job, but I was like, I'm going to go over there because the doctor's going to make a phone call to her and I want to know that I'm there. And as I got there, I was like, oh, something is really seriously wrong. Called the doctor. He said, take her to the hospital. And I went, I'm just going to call 999. Just thought that would be the better option than me taking her. And they just happened to be passing an ambulance, came in, and mom literally, she looked to me like she'd had a stroke, and she had had a stroke. Yeah,
Wow.
it wasn't diagnosed right there on the spot, but it was diagnosed obviously when she was taken to the hospital. So that was the start of my mom needing a lot of care. She'd had mini strokes before, those little mini ones where she just kind of had a little bit of a blackout. But this was one that really affected her and affected her brain. And so yes, that's when she started needing that care.
And up until then, I suppose you and your sister, I mean, you work away a lot all over the country and abroad, but you and your sister had been sharing, like, hospital visits and things like they hadn't needed any real support up until then.
No, because they've not been, neither of my parents has really had any long stints in hospital. Mum might have gone in for an operation and had the normal amount of time, but never sort of for a real illness, unexpected. Luckily, at that point, I was actually working locally, which meant that I was able to see my mom, go to the hospital every day. So that was just like the good fortune that I had that time when she got ill, that I was still very, very local and was going to be local for several more months. And when she went into hospital, she was there for, I want to say, 2.5 months after having that stroke.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that meant going in every day, sharing shifts with your siblings. So
Yeah.
that's when it starts to occur to us, what are we going to do financially? How are we going to fit this in with work? So
Yeah.
did you have help from your siblings? Were they good?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for the hospital visits, my dad is still around, but it didn't just mean taking care of my mom, it meant taking care of my dad. Because
Yes.
obviously my dad had been, my mom and dad were together for 65 years. And so it then meant, okay, the very first day, I was like, Dad, do you know how to use this washing machine? He's like, no.
No.
So the very first day that my mom was in hospital, it was then, I'm going to take you back. I'm going to show you how to use the washing machine. Do you have a clue how to use the oven?
Yeah, my dad's the same.
Yeah. He was like, I don't use the oven because mom always does the cooking. I can use the top, I can use the hob, but I don't know how to use the oven. So he's like, okay, I've got to show you how to do that. And so it became, obviously mom was in hospital, so she was getting the physical care that she needed. But then it was, okay, we need to take care of dad because dad doesn't have a clue how to cook for himself.
Yeah.
He's figuring
Wash
out how to,
yourself.
figuring out how to use the washing machine, and then find out he's putting like 4 tablets in there, stuff like that. And so it was then a case of, okay, mom needs care, but dad also needs a lot of care as well.
And so the pressure of that, I think that's what we're finding, this sandwich generation is, how do we, it's quite taxing and upsetting and mentally draining, I think, finding that extra time, isn't it, to give to the parents who have brought us up and gave us everything to
Exactly.
launch us.
Yeah.
So how on earth did you manage that? Because you have very long hours.
Yeah. So had long hours, but I feel like everything, once again, I think we've talked about divine timing before. And for me, it was still divine timing because what had happened is my sister at that point was off work. She was off work with her own issues. So she'd been off work. She's local council. She was off work. So when I was at work, she was very able to go and look after mom and dad.
Yeah.
When I'd finished that job, she actually went back to work. So then I was able to look
Wow.
after mom and dad. So it just kind of worked out that this timing
Was perfect.
was just working in our favor, really, to allow us to do that. I do have a brother too. So we've talked about my sister.
Yes.
I do have a brother too who is, I guess I would say, less present in kind of in situations, knowing what to do and being practical, So
I think
it did.
that's the way, isn't it? Most women
Yeah.
know how to do it. Men just don't seem to be able to do it as well.
Yes. And it knocks them around a little bit. I think with my brother, more than anything, he suddenly realized my mom isn't the same person that she used to be. And I think mentally for him, he just couldn't get his head around that his mom now has had a stroke and now she's a different person. She'd lost some of her speech. She was not able to walk fully. And so it was all of this, like this independent woman that you would have seen. And though she was getting slower, but she still had her independence.
Yeah,
Now she was wholly dependent. And I think for him, just mentally, that
that's
that just was like, I can't, I don't even want to be part of this because I can't believe that this has happened, you know?
yeah. How interesting. So you've got all the dynamics of the family changing and having to help all together as one after separating and becoming, grown up individuals.
Adults, yeah,
And then so suddenly, I suppose while mum was in hospital, as I've experienced, that's good because they're getting the care. But when they come home,
yeah.
could she come home that time?
Yeah, she came home after 2.5 months. Yeah, so she came home and obviously they came and they assessed and they gave her a hospital bed and stuff like that, with the sides up. And she hated the sides up because she felt like she was in a cot,
Yeah,
so she really hated that. So that kind of messed with her own mental health, I'm sure. Like that made it a lot more real to her that I'm not in my usual lovely, comfy bed that I love so much. I'm now
yeah,
in this bed that's, got sort of electronics and something to pull onto to pull myself up. And it's like
yeah,
being in a hospital, but in your own house. And so I
yeah,
think that affected her because she'd always beg you not to put the sides up if you were leaving the room. I go, Mom, I've got to put the sides up. She'd go, please don't put the sides up. But my mom, because she was so independent, when she's not supposed to be walking, she'd be trying to get out the bed.
wow, right,
That was her. She'd be trying to get out of the bed. So there's always that sort of conscious risk hazard that
yeah,
she'd be causing herself more injury. And so I'd have to pull the sides up. My dad would go, oh, she hates it, don't do it. And I'm going, I've got to. So then we've got this sort of struggle now between what is right for her, what isn't right for her. And that's where the struggle happens as well, because obviously my dad is her husband. I am her daughter.
yeah.
I upset his wife. I'm like, I want to protect my mom. Um,
And
yeah,
also help your dad. You don't want him to be on his own with her when she falls out of bed.
that too. That too.
And if she's the stronger one, she'll make him leave the sides down.
Yeah,
You've got
she
all
did.
these, you've got all these hazards, haven't you? Where
Yeah.
could your dad manage it when
We
she
had
came home?
we had carers come in because we knew that would be difficult, obviously washing, cleaning, all of that sort of stuff. However, we had the carers. Why did we have the carers? Because my dad still wanted to do everything. He's like, he doesn't trust them to do it
Yes,
properly. And
yes,
the carers would come in and they just have to basically make sure she took her medication. I think that's the bit that he was more scared about, that he might not understand how she's supposed to take her medication
yeah,
because he's on his own meds and he doesn't always take those properly. So giving somebody else their meds, I think that kind of worried him, that will I be giving them to her on time? So
yeah,
that's kind of all the carers came in to do. They just came in and gave her meds. And then they'd sit around because they're obviously supposed to be there for a certain period of time. And he wouldn't let them do anything, not even like make her a cup of tea. So,
was
yeah.
the company, did they become her social company?
Yeah,
She
obviously,
enjoyed that.
she got built some quite nice relationships with the carers that came, the ones that were consistent. Sometimes it would change as I think as some of these organizations do. They're all doing different types of shifts, so you're not got the same person. But once
Yeah,
it kind of started to flow a little bit more, she would just build up nice relationships with people. And then my dad did as well. My dad's always a bit of a comedian joker, so he'd always be trying to make them laugh. And he built up his own little sort of relationship with them as well once they got used to them
once
being
they let
there.
them in. But that's that's also the hardest thing, isn't it? Getting them to accept someone to come in. And did you manage to do that via the council, or did you have to pay for that? Because again, all you have to be quite savvy, I think, to know what you can get.
Exactly, and no, because social care, obviously, they give you a certain period of time and then you start paying. So, because of my mom coming out of having her stroke, a certain period of time of assessment, but then once it's assessed what is actually definitely needed, then they had to start paying.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Right. So then we've got the other problem, the financial drain. You and your sister and your brother trying to help. So you got to that and you managed that. And did you still manage to work a bit?
Yeah, I still managed to work, and it was well, I say I managed to work. I did manage to work, and I managed to go away for work too and come back, and I would have shopping lessons with my dad. I'd teach him how to shop, buy the stuff that's got the longest date, buy the 3 for 2,
Yeah.
sort of thing, trying to get him to be more financially aware of what he was spending his money on, and just making sure he wasn't buying things that had the quickest date, stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then teaching him how to cook some very sort of basic meals, but nutritious for mom, because my dad would have ended up in the fish and chip shop every day, or the
Yeah.
Chinese, or something like that.
Or a
Um,
bowl of soup
Bowl of soup. He's like, he can cook a great breakfast. That's always been his specialty. But when it comes to cooking like a proper meal,
every
um,
day.
very, very, and then he said that's where I feel the most stress, because I don't really know what I should be doing every day. So that was a bit of a stress for him. So of course, then it was also cooking meals and packaging them up and saying, okay, Dad, this is what you're going to have Monday. It's what you'll have on Tuesday. It's what you'll have on Wednesday. Then my sister would then go, okay, I'll do the rest of the week. So it was just trying to work that out, who's going to cook what, so that mom, especially mom, has a decent meal
Yeah. Nutrition.
every day.
It
Um,
seems so basic, doesn't it? The biggest problem I'm finding with mine is not eating enough, too tired to cook, hands hurting too much to open things,
yeah,
wobbling a bit, not being, and then going, oh, I'm not going to do it at all because it'll spill. And so the
yeah,
food, which
yeah.
gives you the life and the energy and the nutrition, it seems to be a core. Did he manage to pick things up, your dad? Did he
He
learn
did
all
he
right?
managed to pick things up, but then the inclination for cooking is just not there. So, yes, mom would have a great breakfast every morning, and mom put weight on and she looked good, because she'd have a great breakfast every morning. But come dinner time, I go, what are you giving her? what? Those don't go together. Just whatever he could find to put together, he'd stop sort of thinking, okay, I'll go and buy some salmon because it's easy to cook. It still felt like, oh, this is out of my comfort zone to be cooking these types of meals because I've never done it in my life. My mom was the house, she was the keeper of the house. She made the home. And so him just stepping into that, he just always never felt confident. And I think that was it. It was about his confidence. It's not that I was like, Dad, this actually tastes really good, but still the confidence to do that, he just didn't have the confidence, as I said, or the inclination. And so the thing is, you asked me whether I was able to work. I continued to work, and we obviously worked through all of that process. But then my dad had a stroke. So the pressure, probably got to him too much, and he ended up having a stroke. So then was in hospital. So then I was living with my mom and supposed to start a job. And I was like, I cannot start this right now. Luckily, I was in prep. I was able to do all my prep. I said, I've got to do it from home. I can't start. So I was then living with my mom whilst my dad was in hospital.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and this whole journey has been what, the last 10 years, do you think?
No, it's been 3.
Just 3 years or
22. Yeah.
Gosh, it's happened very quickly then, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But they were doing great then, actually.
Yeah, it was only lockdown, I think, which really impacted a lot of people, didn't it?
Yeah.
People and their confidence, mental health and stuff like that. And so mom became more, I guess, insular in the sense that, she's got arthritic knees. Lockdown meant that you couldn't do much, couldn't really go out.
Yes.
My son, bit of her savior, just loved spending time with him. And then initially it was like, okay, we can't even spend time with you. We just get to the front gate and parents would be at the door, we'd be at the gate. And so, just not being able to go anywhere, that just kind of really impacted her. She's not as mobile now because she's not using her legs. So now she's losing confidence as well because her knees are feeling worse. And so I would say it started from lockdown. Now, the interesting thing about it, just going back to 2022, my mom, you go, come on, mom, let's go for lunch. She'd say she would come, and then she'd go, no, I don't feel well, or something like that. She was making us lots of excuses, not wanting to go out after sort of lockdown. And then the day before she actually had her stroke, she said she just felt like she wanted to go for a walk. And she went for this long walk. And then the next day, or 2 days later, she had a stroke. But something was just pulling her to go. She said, something was just pulling me to go for a walk.
Wow. And that was too much. Do you think that was just too much because she hadn't been doing that activity?
Exactly. It could have been. And then she just was like, yeah, I just wanted to go for a walk. Because I went to see her. I said, are you okay? And she goes, yes. But my legs they're really aching. And she goes, I did go for a long walk. I went, oh, why? She goes, I don't know. I just felt like I just wanted to go for a long walk.
And and that's perhaps what spurred this on, because she had not been at that much fitness.
No.
I'm like, well, oh my goodness, there's so much, isn't there, mentally for you, your sister, your brother, the impact of our parents who have been our providers, who have been the people who look after us, and then suddenly we feel we have.
We become their carers. There's that saying, isn't there? Once a man, twice a child.
Yes.
And it is that. It's that, they become like your children again, where you're having to really look out for them, think for them, help them to make the best decisions, just really watch over them. That's what we become. But obviously, we're still at the point where we've still got our own lives to live as well. We've got jobs to try to maintain, our own children, our own home. But you've got this, sounds bad, but you've got this obligation to these people that did everything for you and would still continue to do everything for you if they could.
Yes.
And so, it's like you've got to allow yourself to make the time for them. But it is that juggle of like, how do I keep my job, but then be on alert for my parents? And you know what our work is. And it's like, how do I manage to do everything? Luckily, my sister is local authority. Her work is very different to mine. She can take off annual leave. She can do a bit more flexible hours and things like that. So, it's good that we are kind of different people and we work in different industries.
But you also still live local to your mum and dad. Thank you for listening to Who Cares with me, Sian Reeves. I'm talking today to Marcia. If you're enjoying listening to Who Cares, please subscribe. And if you want to get in touch and share your story, please do. I'd love to hear from you. And so an interesting bit of this journey was when you had to try and find somewhere for your mum, a care home. How did you tackle that with her? Was she totally against it? Did she?
This only happened when she was at home. She would have maintained being at home, but then she had a fall.
So it was the fall that brought this on.
And it's always the falls, because her sister had a fall and broken her hip. And that's why I was always saying to my mom, and she was then in hospital for ages. And then she went home, and she had another fall, and then she ended up in a care home. And I'd say to my mom, please, I know Dad will leave the sides down, but I'm asking you, don't get out the bed. She'd go, I'm not going to get out the bed. She'd get out the bed. She'd be out of the bed. And when my dad had his stroke, she got out the bed, and he says she literally, because obviously they had a different room now because she had the hospital bed in what would be their main room. So he was in another room. He caught her like in between the two rooms, just holding on, just trying to get to see her husband and make sure he was okay.
Oh my God, how incredible. And that's what led to her tumble.
So she ended up having a tumble. And then he couldn't lift her up because my dad's he's quite a burly character, and my dad's 88, but he's walked everywhere his whole entire life. So he's still got that sort of stamina and fitness and strength. He'd always make sure that he cuts his own hedge with an electric hedge cutter button manual to keep up his strength and stuff like that. So, doing all these little bits of exercise any way he can. But he couldn't get her up that time because she was in so much pain. And I was like, I know what this is, because the same thing had happened to my aunt, and I found her when she was on the floor the first time and we couldn't get her up. And then they said she's broken her hip. So when it happened to my mom, I could see it and I went, it's a hip. It's a hip. So of course, then she went to hospital. She had the operation. She was in hospital for a while with that. And then the operation just caused her so much pain. They had to operate again. But the operation again, they said, if we have to operate again, which we do because she's in so much pain, it will mean that she won't walk again.
Oh my God. And so
then it's a decision,
How was she? Was she furious?
She did. My mom, I think because of the stroke and how that had just kind of affected her, she obviously got vascular dementia from the stroke. It brought that on. And so she kind of knew what was going on, but just wasn't fully aware of what this meant. But obviously we knew what it meant, but we knew that she couldn't remain in pain. And the problem is that when people get old, NHS they may have done a full hip replacement for someone who showed that they were active and mobile and everything else. But because she'd already had a stroke and she wasn't active and mobile, they're not going to spend the money to do that on someone who's not like that. It's almost like a waste of money for them, which is so hard because I know someone who's 80 and had a hip replacement because she's active and mobile, because she goes to the gym. Because they get to a certain age, the NHS will go, is it worth it for this person who... Oh, God. It's hard. Honestly, Sian, it's really hard, isn't it? Getting old can be very cruel. And so, it was a decision that sort of had to be made. And that's how she ended up then going straight from hospital and then having to go into a care home because of the fact that, which was in kind of like a rehab home, which was beautiful, but there wasn't much rehab happening. And so it just meant that she was not able to stay there forever. It was supposed to be quite short term. And then it was to find her a care home. Because my dad obviously can't lift her because she needs a hoist to get out of the bed and everything else. Full
Yeah.
care.
So that must have been terrible for him, your
Yeah,
dad.
horrible.
And then you three are left looking for a care home.
Yeah.
And so you say your sister's got some, she works for local authority, so she was quite helpful with that, I presume, to
She
find.
it was me basically because I'm just that person. So it was me to go. I was like, you know what? I'm looking down, I'm reading all about them. I'm going to visit them. So I was doing a lot of that. She was coming with me, but it was me sort of initiating. This one seems like it's quite good. Let's have a look. But then my dad's not a driver. As I said, he walks everywhere or catches a bus. So then it was okay. That one might look great for a driver, but
Yeah, but not for a.
two buses and a walk for him. So that one's not going to work. And so then it was trying to find something that would also work for my dad as well at his age.
To be able to go every day.
Be able to go every, because that's what he did. He went every single day. He would go in the rain, in the snow. So it was trying to find him something that would mean that, he's safe as well.
Yes.
It's not too far.
And you didn't have any help with that? It was just the fact you were looking and you went.
Yeah, they give you, what's it called? It's not called CIC or something like that, a website to have a look at to see, where all the care homes are, what they're rated as, what their reports say about them, all of that. And so, yeah, they were trying to sort of force us into ones that just had pretty poor reports. And, I had to say to the social worker, you can stop sending me those. I'm never sending her to one of those. She's going to have to stay in this rehab place until we find her somewhere that's suitable. But I'm not sending her to one of those because it's
So
got a
did
space.
you? So did you have to be quite firm then? With,
Yeah, very, very, very firm. And
so
then
that's useful to know, isn't it? That you can say no, we're not going to do that.
we had to say no. We had to say no. And then, my dad just wanted her to stay in this kind of rehab place because of the fact that it was a nice place. It was quite easy for him to get to. And then trying to explain to him, Dad, that they're not just going to make that allowance for you.
Yeah.
Um, it's like older people just see everything in sort of black and white. So
Yeah.
they're trying to negotiate with him and say, Dad, she can't stay there. We've got to find her somewhere because if we don't, one day you're going to get here and they will have moved her because I know people that's happened to where
Wow.
they've just been moved. The family's gone then. They've gone, no, we've moved her. She's gone to a different place. And I said, we do not want that because that could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And you may not be able to get there at all. So it was like, I have to find her a place. It's pointless burying your head in the sand and not realizing that this has to happen. And so it was a lot of talking and me even then having to say to the social worker, I need you to tell him that this is what will happen because I don't think he believes me.
Wow. It's such a lot of balancing
It is.
everybody's feelings and your brother and your sister saying, no, this is the right one.
Yeah,
This is definitely the right one because dad only has to get the 41. And you're
exactly.
convincing the social worker as well, and then making the social worker convince your dad. And then
Exactly.
you managed to do that, and that reached a sort of pattern, didn't
It
it? How
reached a
it worked.
pattern, but still, obviously, she's not coming home. My dad knows she's not coming home. We know that she'll never come home. So all of those things are just emotional because you
Mm.
just think she's never coming home again. And so my dad just found that really difficult to know that that's going to be her, her final place, really.
Yeah,
And so even like, trying to sort things out in the house, he's like, no, I'm not touching anything. He just wouldn't, he just doesn't,
budge on anything.
yeah, because he's just like, that just feels like almost like it's the end of her. She'll never come home. And it's almost like that's almost too much of a reality if I start moving her stuff and
Yes.
can't do that. So, so yeah, just getting him to understand. And then, of course, he'd have run-ins with the care home because I've been in to check her, and I don't even know if they've given her anything to eat. She said she's hungry. And so we'd be going to talk to them. What did she eat? And, so it was also trying to just balance how you manage him, them, my mom, playing mediator, but trying to make sure that things happen the way they're supposed to happen in the care home.
Yes.
Because your mom's left there. So try not to go in too hard.
Yeah.
But, you might be able to see things, but then you're having to go, okay, how do I deal with this in a sort of diplomatic way? Not like my dad. How can I deal with this diplomatically so that
Because she's still there, and you want them to be nice to her and not avoid her and give her a cup of tea in the afternoon.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the hardest thing, I think, isn't it? In the care homes, we hear such horror stories. It's cost so much, and paying for them to give them a bath, paying for them to wash their hair, paying for them to iron a shirt. And you're just like, are they doing that when I'm not there?
This one wasn't.
Yeah, well, that's what you said. They weren't giving her food that she could chew, which was making her gums and teeth bad, weren't you?
Yeah, she was having, they just had her on this sort of soft, mushy food because mom didn't seem like she was swallowing, but that's because she really didn't like the food. So when I would have I'd have a little fish and chip date with her on a Friday, and she'd mouth is chewing, swallowing perfect, but their team of people that come round and check to see, what somebody can do, how they can swallow, do they have a risk of choking? They would say, oh, she's got a risk of choking because she just keeps doesn't like the food and she's spitting it out. And it's because no, she doesn't like the food. It's not because she can't chew, because I've got videos of her thoroughly eating food that I brought in for her. So then it's like, okay, we have to start bringing food in for her, but that's not sustainable.
No,
That's
no.
not sustainable. And so then you notice that, she's losing weight. She's getting more and more drawn. And then there was just so many things happening in that specific care home, that, I just spent a day there and so many things happened. I was like, whoa, if this is just all in one day,
What's happening when we're not there?
exactly.
So, would your advice be to someone who's entering this, the thought process of all this? Is it feels like to be dogged about checking what's going on in the nicest possible way.
Mm.
What tips would you give to people, because you've been through it now? What would
Yeah.
you do, or was there anything you'd do differently?
Um, Gosh, it's hard to say if there's anything I would do differently. Obviously, I think you have to be very um, diligent in your search for a care home and not feel bullied into just putting them anywhere. It has to be right. My mom's Caribbean. It's like even having foods that she would enjoy, stuff like that. So people from different cultures, culturally, they're used to certain food, and then not being able to get that food
Yeah,
obviously is going to impact them and what they enjoy and what they want to eat. So there's that. Visit at any time of the day, just show up. Just like you would, just like, I mean, when my son was at nursery, it's like I just show up.
yeah,
Look through the window, see what's going on. So
yeah,
just show up at any time of the day, just so that you can see what's happening at any time of the day. Spend days there if you can as well. Just be there for the whole day and just keep your eye on what is going on. Because of course, unfortunately, you've got some that love their job and that they love their job, and then others that like, it's just a job. I just ended up doing this job, or I've been doing it for so many years now and I'm just ready to retire. And so, you've always got that in kind of every industry, every job. You're going to have the ones that still love what they do and the ones that don't love what they do. And even though they've got people in their care, they still don't see it in that way. It's still just a job for them.
yeah.
So I think it's really important that you show any care home that you really care about the person that's there.
And you're around.
And you're around. And if you're not showing up, you're just not there. You go once a week on a Saturday afternoon, they know when to expect you. I think you've got to, it's hard because everybody's lives a different life.
Yeah.
But even if you rally in the rest of your family, friends to go and do visits, my mom always had visitors, thankfully. There's always someone going to see her. But yeah, just rallying other people in as well, just to go in and check on her if you know that you can't.
Yeah.
Or
Gosh,
them.
it's a minefield, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Mm.
Of an energy that you had to find. You know, you've got a young son, and well, I mean, he's still a young son,
Yeah.
20s, you know,
Yeah.
at university, you know, so you're supporting him, supporting yourself,
Mm.
and you're supporting your dad
Mm.
managing,
Yeah.
as well as what is the best place for mummy.
Exactly, exactly. And that place that I was talking about, once I'd spent that day there, I moved her out of there very swiftly. Very
How difficult was that for you to challenge that situation?
it was it wasn't difficult for me because it was my mom. you
But I
know,
mean,
so
did they allow you to do it? You know,
I challenged it, but I challenged it in writing. I always try to keep a paper trail of everything. So I challenged it in writing. Whilst I was there, I challenged it and said, yeah, but I've been here for that many hours and she's not been changed. And you're telling me that she has, and she hasn't because I've been here. So someone's lying to me. And that is not giving me any confidence in you at all now because I know that I've been here.
yes.
So it was stuff like that. I was just going, they're lying to me. So what else did they lie to me about? And then there was several things that happened during that where I've gone, oh my goodness, what is going on? And so then I wrote to them. I wrote to the manager, and I just didn't receive a reply. No reply.
Wow.
No concern for the family, to give them any confidence. It was just so I wrote to them again. And I was just like, what is going on? How can you have somebody who's concerned for their parent and you're not even responding, which was telling me so much. And so in the end, we ended up having a meeting, and the meeting was along the lines of I'd already found her a place at that point. I was like, I'm having a meeting out of courtesy because I want you to know how we feel and what you're doing wrong because I don't want it to happen to other people. And so, the meeting, it transpired, well, it was only me here because it was the assistant manager. My manager wasn't here at the time. And I have lots of other things to do. That was the answer. And I'm like, we all have our jobs to do, and that involves everything. You have to work that out. That's obviously not my problem. That's your problem because this is your job.
Gosh,
And
what
at
an
that point, I was like, well, we are moving her, but I felt like we needed to have this discussion. And so, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and how quickly did you manage to do that then?
I literally moved her in a week. I'd already started the process from the week before we had the meeting. I was like, right, I'm having that meeting, but I'm moving her out anyway. So I don't need to wait for this meeting. I'm moving her. And then I was very fortunate that I had a friend whose mom was in a care home. And just like a act of the universe, we'd met up, a bunch of us from school, we'd met up. We didn't really talk about so much about like parents, talk about school days. And then quite late in the evening after we'd gone home, she sent me this very random WhatsApp message saying, is your mom happy where she is? That was her question to me. Is your mom happy where she is? And I was like, actually, no, she isn't. She's not happy. And she says, well, my mom's in a place which is not far from your dad. And I know there's a room next to her that's become available.
Wow. Wow.
Divine intervention.
And then you jumped on it. I mean, you are such an inspiration, Marcia. It seems like you managed to get things done and achieve things, and you're looking things up and finding the best place. And I think that is what we all have to do: is look for.
Very active. You've got to be very active, very active. You can't just leave it to them or leave it to chance because if you think social care, social workers, whatever, they have a lot of people that they're dealing with. And you might think your mom is your parent, your dad is the most important person in the world, but then so does everybody else.
Yeah. So
And
how do you've just got to keep pushing, haven't you? It seems
yeah,
like, and ensuring that this is still happening.
Exactly.
Because that's what it's terrifying, I think, otherwise, if you're not taking control of it. Marcia, thank you so much
Oh,
for sharing all of this, because it makes us feel less on our own, I think, when we
yes,
talk to
yeah.
someone who's been through it. And, if when we listen back to this, we'll go, oh, I can do a Marcia.
To do. Oh. Listen, we've all got it in us. And, when it's the people that you love and you care about, whatever you're going through, excuse me, you will find a way. And sometimes you're just tired and you think, but it's my mom.
Yeah,
You're going, it's my mom. And you know that your mom would have done the same for you as a child. It's my mom, it's my daughter,
absolutely.
it's my child. So it's the same thing really. And you feel better knowing that you've done it for your parents as well.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time. Really, thank you. And good
Welcome.
with the rest of everything. And
Ah, thank you, Sean. Thank you.
thank you, Marcia.
Right. Take care. Thank you.